Today, we're looking at a red ink from Akkerman, their Dutch Masters number 9. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. As always, there's timestamps down below in the description, so if you're in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I did the writing samples, then put the ink into this Levenger True Writer with a broad nib. I wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I do test other papers, but those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Well, let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. No bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some spots of shading. Like during the downstroke in the number 9, it has the moment it gets darker and then lighter again. The number symbol is darker on the right side than it is on the left. It just means that it's capable, but not really shading much there with the stub. Now the extra fine is noticeably darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some better shading. Now it's going from a darker midtone to a darker tone, but it definitely is there. You see it very dark with the Q to a dark to very dark. So the shading is quite subtle. It's dark to very dark, but it's giving this ink a nice character about its writing, and I don't typically care for red inks. 9 seconds to dry. Medium. No feather spread, halo sheen, plenty of shading. It actually comes across much better than it did with the extra fine. You can see it where the quick starts dark, gets lighter, gets darker, gets a little bit lighter at the C, gets much darker at the K. Nice. Brown starts very dark, gets very dark again. So it's going from those two tones really, a dark to very dark, and it's quite nice. The Fox goes from dark to very dark on the X. This is really a very nice red. 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine, far left to far right, and you can see some color variation. Same with the medium, far left to far right, you see the color variation, but it's more of this dark to very dark. Tomoe River, no bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. I think I just started a little dry there, but ignoring that part and looking at the rest. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 12 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 23 seconds to dry. No color variation in the scrubbies. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. Rhodia. No bleeding. No ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is slightly darker, just a tad darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 8 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit darker than the the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 13 seconds for it to dry. Both scrubbies have no color variation. I don't know what I'm talking. No color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it, and that's what we have for this part. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this really pink tone on the bottom. Now it's pushing its way up and we get this kind of red that's just a little, it's just a little off of a red there. It's really incredibly interesting because there's something that looks wrong, but it's definitely red. Well, the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now that pink across the bottom definitely formed a line that was going to stay there. That red pushed its way up, and there we get to see what looked wrong about the red the first time. We see oranges in, not the fruit, the color, the tones of orange. It would be weird to have fruit parts in the chromatography. But we see oranges show up in the second chromatography, which made that red seem just a little off. But I do think that there may be a little bit of hang around with this. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, there is a lot of feathering going on here, an incredible amount of feathering. Yes, the extra fine goes to about a medium, but the thing is, everything that was written is easily readable. So, you might be willing to use this in a note-taking situation. Now, water's lifting all the darkest tones, but it's definitely not getting whatever that base pink is. That is still very much there. Pen flush is completely reactivating and removing this ink. We easily see that we're getting the white of the paper and the dots of the Rhodia dot pad coming through, meaning that pen flush is all you would need to get this out of your pen. 1/3 bleach solution does completely remove it from the paper, but you don't need that to clean your pen. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 9 has a viscosity of 1.71, making this a wetter ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 9 has an average dry time of 13 seconds. So despite it being a wetter ink, it does have a normal dry time. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman Dutch Masters number 9, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I wanted a nice brown. Perhaps I'm hungry. I went with Colorverse Space Laika. The second writing sample is done on TWSBI, Monokaki, and Moji paper. Here we're taking a look at this on TWSBI notebook paper. Now we get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is way, way, way darker than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine, still quite a bit darker than the stub. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. Monokaki. No bleeding, minor ghosting, it's a thin paper. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is significantly darker than the stub. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. How about Moji? Well, they give us no bleeding and no ghosting. It's easier to see if I keep it on camera instead of having it like down here. That way if you try to skip, you can't even see where it's at. Bring it back up. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is significantly lighter. than the stub with no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, nowhere near as dark as the stub. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Akkerman Dutch Masters number 9? I like this one much better than I did number 7. It's toned down a little bit, so it doesn't feel obnoxious on the page. Now, like many red inks, it doesn't shade very much, but this red is much more pleasing to me than most of the reds that I've come across, making this perhaps the next red. If I was to get a bottle, I'd get this one. So what nib and pen would give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a medium flow broad is really what put down enough ink to make it nice and stand out on the page and really show off its color. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.